Hey friends, Kevin here, and today we're going to talk about solar. Solar in your camper van, whether you're using a minivan or a cargo van, or whatever type of van you're using to do van life or to go out and do short trips with, or if you're full-time doing long trips. Now, if you're thinking that solar is confusing, this is the video for you because I'm going to make this really simple. But if you look at forums and you go and read and you watch a bunch of videos, they make this seem much more complicated than it is or than it has to be. So my promise to you is this. When we get done with this video, you're going to know everything you need to know about being able to put solar, a basic solar system in your van. Exactly what you're going to have, exactly what you're going to have to do, and I'm going to show you that it's not hard. But if you choose to have someone else do it for you, at least you'll know what things cost and what it requires, and you'll know whether or not you're being ripped off by whatever quote you get for someone else to do it. And trust me, I am no artiste, but this will make sense. First is going to be your solar panels. So let's start with a basic system. Your most common size for a solar panel is 100 watts. Now, you're going to lose a little efficiency, and what they call a 100-watt solar panel is really going to be about 80 watts. But basic way of thinking of this is a solar panel sitting in direct sunlight should be able to power a 100-watt light bulb. And it can. We're just going to take that same energy and force it through a system down into a storage battery, so we have that energy in that battery for when we choose to take it out to power something else. As far as your solar panel, they make these flexible solar panels. If you've seen those, avoid those. Those tend to not last very long. They tend to have a lot of problems. What you want is a standard rigid solar panel. We're going to use these 100-watt panels as an example. You want to stick with a name brand. I use Renogy. I recommend Renogy. Links to everything we talk about are going to be down below. Renogy makes simple kits. So you buy a kit based on the number of solar panels that you need. And it includes everything except one little item that I'll tell you about in a moment that you're going to need to do a basic installation. But we're going to have this 100-watt panel. What's going to happen, you're going to have the two wires come out of this panel that's going to go into a little connector. Now what you're going to have is wires coming out of these panels. You're going to have a couple of wires coming out. These go into connectors that are waterproof connectors. The reason you don't want to get into mixing and matching, even though these connectors have a standard name, is a lot of times from one company to the next, they're not quite exactly right and won't lock together right. This is why I choose to keep everything that I do Renogy products. So I don't have any of those issues from buying this from one company and this from another company and this from another company trying to save $2. I want it to work, and I don't want to have to twiddle with it constantly. And in the nearly 3 years now I've had my stuff up and running, I haven't had to twiddle with it constantly. So from your connectors, you're going to have wires. This is the wire. Again, if you're buying one of these kits, you don't have to worry about calculating the right gauge of wire. All of these things are already done for you. It's going to be right. So you're going to run that wire inside of your van. Now, a lot of people with a newer van don't want to drill any holes, don't want to deal with that. I understand that. It's better if you can, and these installations I'm going to show you, optionally, you can drill one hole to do this installation. Using this little product, which just makes it nice and neat and clean and waterproof if you drill through the top of your van in order to make this connection. Optionally, you can go through a window, because minivans generally have a side window that will tilt open an inch or so. Cargo vans are going to have a window that will open somehow. So if you don't want to drill a hole at all, you can get by without it. And when the time comes that it's really cold, you just unplug your little connector, pull your wire in, and close your window. See, I told you I was going to make this stuff simple for you. The wires that this comes with are going to be the same color, and wires you buy are generally going to be the same color. So I use something to differentiate them. So the positive, red, I have red tape on every 6 inches or so all the way through my system. So I can look at a wire anywhere and know whether I'm dealing with the positive wire or the negative wire. Now, with a solar system, you're going to have a charge controller or a solar controller, whatever different companies want to call it. It's a little box that handles everything for you. You're going to decide where you're going to put that little box in your van. The little box is about yay big, weighs just a couple of ounces, can be installed anywhere that's convenient for you. You're going to install that solar controller. You're going to cut the wires at that point. So you're going to have wires going into the solar controller, positive and negative, and you're going to have wires coming out of the solar controller that are now going to be sending that power to whatever storage battery that you're using. So for our example, to keep it simple, we're just going to have one storage battery. Now, there are 3 kinds of storage batteries. You have basically lead acid, which is the old battery type like you have under the hood of your van to start it with. Except you're going to use a deep cycle version, often referred to as a marine battery. This is going to be your least expensive option. You can buy these at Walmart anywhere for about $80. The thing is with that type of battery is they need to be vented because there are gases that are produced. So this is why, and this is what's been used in RVs in years, they'll be under the steps or they'll be under the vehicle somewhere, so they have room for those gases to escape. You don't want to have that type of battery inside with you. Now, you can use a battery box and drill another hole and try to vent the air outside, but again, a lot of people don't want to drill into their vans any more than they have to if it's a newer van or they're just not confident in doing it. And I understand that. That brings us to the second type of battery, which is called an Agm battery. That's more expensive, but you don't have to deal with venting it, so you can install it inside with you anywhere. The third type of battery is going to be lithium batteries. Again, that can be put in there with you, but it's going to be much, much more expensive. You're going to have these people that jump in there and tell you you're an idiot if you use anything other than a lithium battery. Not everyone wants to or is able to buy a $1,000 battery. Not everyone is going to be on the road 365 days a year. Not everyone maybe is going to do this stuff for years and years and years. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's great that you have a battery that supposedly, can last 7 to 10 years if you're going to use it. So I would recommend starting simple and upgrading to these systems once you know van life is going to be for you. You're going to be doing this, a great deal or all of the year. And I just see too many people jumping into these really extreme setups before they even know what they're doing or before they even know if they're going to like doing it. Now I can tell you, in my setup in the big van, because my batteries already had a place to vent, because my big van had a house battery to begin with, it was no problem. So I used the cheap $80 marine batteries. They've been running 24 hours a day, day after day, the last couple of years with no issues. And you're probably going to have about a 2-year life out of those. If I was doing this in the minivan or something, that battery had to be in the living compartment with me, then I would move up to the more expensive Agm battery. They're going to last a little bit longer, makes it worth the extra money you're going to pay for one, and again solves the problem of you having to vent it outside. Again, all of these things, examples of all these are going to be linked down in the description. We'll talk about the total cost of this stuff in a moment. But this is your basic system. You now want to get the power out of the battery when you want the power out of the battery.
Say, are sparks supposed to be coming out of my...
If you're using 12-volt devices, you can just buy a 12-volt socket, run your wires, install that little socket wherever you want it, and now you can plug a device that's a 12-volt device in any time that you want to. If you want to use a 110, 120 device, which are household outlet style things, then you need an inverter. If you're going to be charging something like a laptop, running a little blender, whatever, you can get by with an inverter that's maybe 300 or 400 watts. If you're going to try to run something more extreme, run a hair dryer, you're going to try to run a coffee pot, now you're getting up to where you need a 1500 watt or better inverter. These things will be linked down below also. Your inverter, the same way, wherever you have your inverter that you choose to install it, you're just going to have a positive and a negative wire coming off of it that you're going to hook to the battery. That's it. If there's anything I've lost you on so far, go back, rewind a couple of minutes. Sometimes it takes seeing this a time or two, maybe for it to sink in and maybe for it to click. But trust me, this will make perfect sense. Now, we'll get into a couple of the other questions that people are going to have about these basic solar installs. Number one, do I need anything else other than what comes in those kits and buying whatever battery I'm going to use? And the answer is yes. One other thing. You need to be able to fuse this somehow. And you can buy a fuse kit to do it, or you can do what I recommend and what I have and use a circuit breaker, which acts as a fuse. So if something overloads, it will trip that circuit breaker. The advantage to that is not having to take things apart to change the fuses. And if you need to do maintenance on anything, you just press the little button on the circuit breaker. It trips that circuit manually. You do what you need to do, and then you click it back together, and it magically works again. An example of why you might want to do that would be you're working on your battery and now you've got a little inverter and you've decided you need to add a larger inverter. You don't want all this solar energy going into the battery while you're trying to work on it. And granted, you can take everything loose and do it the hard way, but so you don't worry about shorting anything out, you just have this little circuit breaker right here on one line before it goes into the solar controller. So if I need to work on anything, I need to check on anything, all I have to do is click the little button on that circuit breaker and I'm good to go. Keep things simple. These circuit breakers are about $15. It will make your life a lot easier. This brings us up to the next question people ask is, all right, how am I supposed to attach this panel to my van? Because it's going to come with a bunch of screws and it's going to come with a bunch of clamps. And when you see a picture of that, it's going to scare you to death because it's a lot of parts and you're thinking, how am I supposed to drill into this? Here's the simple way. I'm going to do a whole video separately about all of this, but here it is simply explained. If you have a fiberglass roof like I have on the bigger van, rather than drill holes into the fiberglass, it is easier just to tape the solar panel down. And the tape is going to be linked down in the comments in the description also. The tape that you use to do this is the same stuff they use to put windows in skyscrapers. That's why people can push against the giant windows when they're 40 floors up in the air and they don't have to worry about the window falling out and them falling out with it. This stuff has amazing strength. Hundreds of pounds of strength go into every little inch of this. This is why a very little bit of this tape on these brackets is enough to keep the solar panel from flying off of your van while you're driving down the road at 70 miles an hour. Again, mine has been on there mounted this way for several years. They haven't come loose. They're not going to come loose. Your other way of installing it, if you have a minivan, you probably have luggage racks. If you have a cargo van, you may have some type of luggage racks on there. And you probably have enough room to set a solar panel right down inside of those luggage racks. So instead of drilling into the roof of your van to do the install, what you're going to do is drill little holes right through the luggage rack and use those as your mounting points into the solar panel. In which case you could use screws and bolts, or you could even use just plastic wire ties. And that will keep your solar panel secure and keep it from flying away while you're driving down the road. It's not hard. Once you have this stuff in your hand and you have this 15-pound solar panel and you can set it up there and see where it can go and look at the way you can mount it, the different ways you can mount it, it will make a lot more sense. And you'll be sitting there going, wow, I can do this. Because you can do this. Almost anyone can do this. But if you choose to have someone do it for you, at least you know now what is involved in doing it. The next question, what about the kits that include more solar panels? What I have on my large van, because I had room to do it, I bought the kit that has 2 solar panels. The minivan doesn't have room for me to do that. So if I go solar on this minivan that I just picked up, it's going to be this type of basic system. Because my big van was larger, I had room to do a little bit more. So I bought the kit that had 2. It's going to include the extra little connectors you need to make everything work. And it's that simple. And these Renogy kits can run up to 4 solar panels if you have room for 4 solar panels. In my head, when I did my kit on the big van, I bought the one with 2 panels, and I knew that I had room to install a 3rd panel. Turns out I haven't needed it, so I haven't done it. And 2 years later, I just don't need to do it. What I have is more than enough power to run my refrigerator 24 hours a day, and lights and charge phones and Kindles and whatever else I need to do. Run a blender, run a coffee pot for 8 minutes to make a pot of coffee. Whatever it is. The next question is going to be, what about batteries? If you have batteries, you just add another battery to your system. Problem solved. Now you're going to get into things on forums. Should I do this stuff in parallel, or should I do it consecutively? And should I use 6-volt batteries and try to use multiple 6 volts and wire them a different way to get into 12 volts? And people are screaming, oh, that's the only way to do it. And should I do 12 volts and up to 24 and then step everything down? This is the crap that makes it confusing. And quite honestly, this is the stuff that no one almost needs to do a basic installation in a van. If you're trying to do a $10,000 solar installation on an RV, then yes, you need to know some of these things. But for the average person, you don't. Just like everything else I talk about in videos, Just like everything else I talk about in videos, you can keep this stuff simple. You don't have to make it as complicated as people try to make it. Another example of that, solar controllers. There's two kinds. They have these initials, PWM and MPPT. And I can tell you what they mean, and we can have a 30-minute debate over it. But the fact is, it doesn't matter. This Renogy kit is going to come with a PWM version. Everybody's going to tell you that MPPT is better for blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. They're right. It is better. That doesn't mean you need it. Again, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, last couple of years, running what I need it to run. It can do the same for you. Now, if I was, again, doing a $10,000 solar installation with 4 of these $1,000 a piece batteries and 8 solar panels and all of this other stuff, then yes, I would spend the extra few dollars for a little better solar controller. But again, for what we're doing in van life, we don't need to get into all of that. The stuff with the kit, the fuse, the battery, that's all you need. Then you add an outlet and or you add the inverter so you can get the power out of the battery. That's it. That's the end of it. At that point, I don't ever want to touch it again, and I'm not going to unless something happens. In 2 years, I think I've disconnected my battery twice, and that was to add or change something I had running directly to it. Otherwise, it works without me having to do anything. My refrigerator is hooked to it all the time. I don't have to deal with it. I don't think about it. I don't have to do anything to it. And that brings us up to one more thing, which is, oh my God, what about with the solar panel when the sun goes around? I need to be able to move the solar panel through the day. You don't have to. Now, as far as tilting the panels, let me explain mine. If I put it on the minivan, I'm going to have the one panel, it's going to be there, and that's it. I'm not going to deal with tilting it. And I know I don't have to, because on my big van that I have the 2 panels, because of the shape of the roof, they don't set dead level. They set at just opposite each other at a little bit of an extreme. It's never made a difference. I have plenty of power out of it. Now, I could go and I could install extra brackets and ways to do this, and I could spend my day when I'm out, park somewhere, and try to follow the sun and make sure I have the right angle through the day. I don't go do this for that reason. I'm not out camping for that reason. Again, I don't want to mess with this stuff over and over through the day. This or anything else I have, I want to install it, I want it to work, I want it to be dependable, and then I want to forget about it. And I want to go enjoy myself doing something else. Now, there will be a lot of people tell me I'm wrong in that philosophy. All I can tell you is this worked for me. And while I'm out exploring and hiking and doing my thing, they can sit over at their campsite and they can try to adjust their solar panels every hour to get that last little bit of energy they can get out of it. That's not why I'm out there. It's up to you to decide which philosophy you want to follow with what you do in your minivan or camper van or cargo van or whatever you are using for van life. And if you think I'm wrong, that's fine. If you think I'm right, that's great. In an upcoming video, I'm going to give you a tour of that big van so you can see exactly how everything is installed on it and just how simple it is, exactly like we talked about. and how it works and why I've never had to deal with it. But you can duplicate this on whatever van that you have, now that you know what you're going to have to work with. And again, this is going to be enough to power, main thing being a refrigerator 24 hours a day, and to run the other little optional things, lights and charging devices and what have you, that you may need to also run. Put any questions you have down in the comment section. If there was anything I wasn't completely clear about that has you confused. And again, if there's something, some part of it, go back and listen to that little section a time or two, and it will probably click and make sense. But it's okay to have questions. That's what I'm here for. We'll talk soon.